Welcome back. Now, over the next few months, Nigeria will take delivery of another $321 million from the United States of America, being part of the loot stashed away in the island of Jersey by former head of state General Sani Abacha. Nigeria's Attorney General and Minister of Justice Abubakar Malami says a small portion of that money is from the loot of former Delta State Governor James Ibori. Now, this is about the fourth tranche of money to be returned to Nigeria in nearly 2 years. The federal government has said the new $321 million being expected will be used to finance three major critical developmental projects, which includes the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, the Abuja-Kano Expressway, and the second Niger Bridge. Now, some of the conditions for the loot recovery, which has been agreed by the government of Jersey, United States of America, and the Federal Republic of Nigeria, are that 1. Projects on which the funds will be expended will be supervised by the Nigeria Sovereign Investment Authority and independently audited. 2. The Federal Republic of Nigeria will also establish a monitoring team to oversee the implementation of the projects and to report regularly on progress. This is to ensure that the funds are not diverted for other purposes. Joining me from Abuja now to talk more about this is Senator Kola Balogun, who represents Oyo South Senatorial District in the Senate. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. First off, are you shocked that about 20 years after we're still recovering money from the late Abacha?
Am I what? Am I shocked?
Are you surprised?
Am I surprised?
Yes.
No, I'm not surprised. Why should I be surprised? Because this money was taken out of the country, and so you need really to work with the countries where the money has been domiciled.
No, the surprise element that I'm asking is, would you have imagined that, an individual would have stolen so very much?
Well, it's not a question of whether I could have imagined. It's a question of whether it's not madness. So if you want to know my opinion, I'll say it's just it's most unreasonable thing to do for an individual, whether it's Abacha or whoever it is, to steal so much from the common patrimony of the people of this country. So that's not a question of whether I can imagine. I'm not imagining anything. But I can tell you for sure that for me, I think it's madness.
So, and what's your take on the conditions now that have been attached? And the Nigerian government, of course, saying that the money would be channeled to three key infrastructure projects: the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, Abuja-Kano rail line, and of course the second Niger Bridge.
Yeah, I agree with that, because we have taken up the issue on the floor of the Senate several times. We all know that for us to grow our economy to become a prosperous nation, the key things we need to pay attention to: 1 is power, 2, road infrastructure, 3, rail infrastructure, and of course, we begin to look at social infrastructure. We're talking about education, healthcare, and of course, we need to diversify the economy. Look in the direction of agriculture, solid mineral, and culture and tourism. But for you to even attract people to come to your country to visit, you need to make the country inviting by making sure that you have standard infrastructure. So yes, and that also has to do with whether or not you're paying attention to wealth creation, employment generation. If you go all over the world looking for investors to come to your country, yes, Nigeria is a resourceful nation. We have human and material resources, but yet we can't get it right because we don't have all that it would take to attract people, investors, to come to this country. So the best way to start, really, whatever you have, whether it's Abacha loot or whatever it is, whatever recovery to covered funds from whoever, for now, should be targeted at improving on our infrastructure, so that at least we begin to jumpstart and reinvigorate the economy. We need to grow the economy, but you can't do all that unless you invest on infrastructure. Yes, I agree with the government that the money needs to be invested in infrastructure, starting from power, road, rail, and then, of course, thereafter, we have to invest on education and healthcare. We have to invest in agriculture. We have to invest in solid mineral, diversify the economy so that we can move away from being a monolithic economy to diversified and expanded economy. So I agree with the government as far as that is concerned.
Okay, I understand your point. Now, in the past, people had accused governments of the past of not being quite accountable and transparent with the way recoveries were actually spent. And there had always been this fear that sometimes some of these recovered funds end up getting reluted. Do you have that kind of concerns with this $321 million we're expecting?
Yes. Incidentally, just this morning, we passed for second reading an amendment to Fiscal Responsibility Act. And this is what this particular amendment seeks to do, because the act that you had before, which gives the responsibility for this particular commission to ensure that we have transparency and accountability in the governance, did not provide for prosecutorial power for the commission. So if you give an agency power to monitor, to investigate, to even apprehend culprits, yet you do not give such agency the power to prosecute, then it's like having an agency that can bark but cannot bite. So with what we have done just this morning, the bill was passed for second reading, and I'm sure before you know it, it become an act of the National Assembly, and once it becomes fully operational, your concern, which is also my concern, would have been taken care of as far as transparency and accountability is concerned.
So in your own opinion, what kind of monitoring would you want to see in place?
What kind of what?
Monitoring would you want to see in place? The monitoring of those funds now, how the funds are spent.
Already you have
the fiscal response, the finance, finance
bill.
Beyond
that, as a legislature, our responsibility is to appropriate funds. But of course, you also go one step further. We just don't appropriate funds. We also do what we call oversight function. So, yes. So we also have a role to play. And Ninth National Assembly has taken a deliberate decision not just to appropriate funds to government agencies. We're going to take, and we're taking it already, our oversight function very, very seriously. So appropriate funds, we'll make sure that the funds are used for what they're meant to be used for. So we also have a role to play. The executive arm of government also has a role to play, and perhaps that is why we're talking about Fiscal Responsibility Commission. So by the time you have all this, I'm sure we will have a reduction in unacceptable activities of lack of transparency and accountability in our governance.
All right, Senator Balogun, thank you very much for your time with us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll continue this conversation. On DEJI 360, we don't just ask the questions. What is wrong with amending the Constitution the way the National Assembly members have been doing it? We seek answers.
The Constitution is constituent. Our problem is not lack of laws. Our problem is lack of the willpower to implement our laws.
Answers that provide clarity.
While we negotiate, we should try to make it a point
that the girls must be complete.
The clarity you need to make informed judgments so that you can make the right decision and take action. People are saying it is you politicians that are responsible for this, that you are the reason why this is happening.
All these dollars that call themselves governors in this country.
I wish we had people like Tony at the National Assembly.
God forbid that I go to join that ballot.
DEJI 360, providing clarity to issues.